There is a version of you right now, timid, indecisive, filled with excuses and fear. That version is not you. That version is the imposter, the echo of your doubts, the product of years of mental conditioning. And unless you kill your weak self, it will kill every dream you've ever had. Napoleon Hill didn't write for comfort seekers. He wrote for warriors of the mind, those ready to face the mirror and do what most men fear: total reconstruction. The kind of change that rips apart everything false so you can rebuild layer by layer, a version of yourself that is disciplined, immune to criticism, and unstoppable. You've probably heard the phrase, think and grow rich. But what Hill meant wasn't just money. He meant power, control, mastery over self. And it starts with this brutal, necessary act: kill the weak version of yourself and rebuild. In this video, we're diving deep into the psychology of self-destruction and self-creation. We'll uncover why most people stay stuck in mediocrity, how fear feeds your weaker identity, and exactly how Hill's teachings can forge a version of you that dominates, not hesitates. If you're tired of watching your potential die in silence, this is your turning point. Stay sharp, stay present. Your resurrection begins now. There comes a moment in every man's life when he must decide whether he will continue living under the domination of his fears, habits, and mental laziness, or whether he will rise in rebellion against them. Napoleon Hill called this moment the crisis of decision. It is the spiritual battlefield where one either becomes the master of self or remains forever its slave. To kill your weak self is not symbolic. It is war. It requires a conscious declaration of internal revolution. The weak version of yourself is not some abstract concept. It is the real entity you've allowed to dominate your behavior, the voice that whispers, "Not now," the hand that reaches for distraction, the emotion that folds under pressure. That version of you is alive only because you fed it. Hill wrote clearly, "Man's only limitation lies in his development and use of his imagination." The weak self is the result of imagination misused. It imagines failure, rejection, loss. It fantasizes catastrophe instead of victory. And so, to kill this inner enemy, one must reprogram the imagination with precision. That process begins with a definite chief aim. Not a vague desire or a scattered wish, but a precise, burning goal, written down, internalized, and repeated. With emotion, Hill emphasized this over and over in Think and Grow Rich. Without a definite purpose, the weak self thrives because it can justify delay, confusion, and fear. But with a purpose so sharp it burns in your chest, there's no longer room for softness. It is burned away in the fire of clarity. You must treat your weak habits like enemies of the state. Identify them, name them, trace their origin. Did they begin with a teacher's criticism, a parent's doubt, a failure that scarred you? Whatever the source, understand this: they do not belong to you. They were installed by external suggestion, which Hill called hypnotic rhythm. It is the devil's tool, repetition of weak thoughts until they form grooves in your mind and guide your every move without resistance. And here's the hard truth: as long as you obey those grooves, you are not living. You are existing in a mechanical routine of defeat, a spiritual death disguised as normalcy. Hill made it plain in Outwitting the Devil. The majority of people are drifters, controlled by fear, moving without aim, victims of mental inertia. To stop drifting, you must slam your fist down and declare, "No more." This declaration is not once, it is daily, hourly. Each time the voice of your weak self rises, you must crush it with discipline. Discipline, in Hill's philosophy, is not punishment. It is freedom. It is the process of installing new grooves. When you act with purpose, when you hold yourself accountable to your vision, you begin to cut new channels in your mind. This is mental alchemy. Consider this: every time you choose action over hesitation, clarity over confusion, courage over fear, you are swinging the axe at your weak self. But that version won't die easily. It will fight back with comfort, with fatigue, with distraction. It will seduce you with old pleasures, familiar patterns, soft living. That is the test. That is the price. Do not look for motivation. Look for resolve. Motivation is a spark. Resolve is a furnace. Hill taught that desire backed by faith knows no such word as impossible. And faith, as he defined it, was not religious. It was emotionalized belief, created through repetition of thought. You must repeat who you are becoming until it overpowers who you have been. This is where many fail. They try for a week, a month. Then the weak self rises and whispers, "You've done enough." That whisper is the voice of death. Not physical death, but the death of greatness. You must become deaf to it. The weak self is emotional, reactive. It seeks approval. The strong self is directed by definiteness. It acts in silence. It does not advertise its growth. Hill said, "Tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it." Your transformation must be private, internal, invisible to those still enslaved by their old identities. Let this video be your first blow against the enemy within. And if these words strike you with force, it's because they come from timeless truths. Napoleon Hill gave us a blueprint, but blueprints are useless. Unless you build, so build, and start with the destruction. Kill your weak self, not with hate, but with higher intention. Replace softness with structure. Replace doubt with decision. Replace fear with focus. If you've made it this far, I want you to know, this journey you're beginning, of self-conquest and mental domination is not easy, but it is worth everything. If these ideas are lighting something inside you, if you feel the pull of your higher self awakening, do not let this be a passive experience. Click like, subscribe. This is just the beginning. You're not alone on this path, but you are responsible for walking it. The next step, keep watching. Let's rebuild. Rebuilding the self begins with the annihilation of illusions. Napoleon Hill taught that the human mind is not only the seat of thought, but the battlefield where every victory or defeat is decided long before any action is taken. Before you can rebuild, you must first destroy the false foundations, ideas, beliefs, assumptions that have kept you imprisoned. The weak version of yourself was constructed from environmental influences, social conditioning, and the repetition of failure. It is not you. It is an inherited persona, formed without consent, fed by fear, and protected by comfort. And Hill was unrelenting in identifying this pattern. Fear is the tool of a man-made devil. This devil lives not in some far-off inferno, but in the mind of the man who refuses to question his own thoughts. To rebuild is to install definiteness, and definiteness cannot coexist with contradiction. The man who says he wants power but fears judgment is split. The man who craves success but resents discipline is already defeated. Hill warned, indecision is the seedling of fear. Until you are brutally clear about what you want and what you will sacrifice to get it, the weak self will always have a voice. This internal rebirth is not passive, it's active, demanding, and deliberate. It begins with mental reorganization. What Hill called accurate thinking. You must separate fact from opinion, strength from sentiment. For example, it is a fact that you have failed. It is only an opinion that you are a failure. One must be accepted as data, the other rejected as poison. To rebuild, the mind must be ruled. It cannot be allowed to run wild, grabbing onto any negative suggestion, any excuse, any fear. This is where autosuggestion enters. Hill's method of controlling the subconscious through repeated emotionally charged affirmations is not a motivational trick. It is the mechanism by which the weak self is overwritten. Here's how. You write your definite purpose. You speak it aloud with faith morning and night. You visualize the end result as already accomplished. You feel it, believe it, act upon it. Over time, the subconscious begins to reject contradictory impulses. The weak self loses power. You are no longer reacting to life. You are constructing it. This is not magic, it is neuroplasticity. But Hill had the insight before the science. He understood the mind as both servant and saboteur, depending on who commands it. Most people never rebuild because they are still negotiating with their old identity. They want transformation without pain, but there is no such transaction. To rebuild, you must suffer the discomfort of new habits. You must endure the silence of unseen progress. You must become immune to mockery, impervious to doubt, and intolerant of mediocrity. Hill never sugarcoated this. Success requires no apologies, he said. Failure permits no alibis. When you are building the new self, you must operate in silence, letting your results speak the language of power. Every thought must be inspected. Is this thought useful? Does it serve my vision? Would the man I am becoming allow this thought to live? If not, kill it, ruthlessly. The mind cannot be both sanctuary and battlefield. You must choose what it becomes. Rebuilding also means aligning your environment. The strongest mind can be undone by constant exposure to weak associations. Hill wrote extensively about the power of a mastermind, a group of individuals aligned with a common goal, vibrating in harmony. If your current circle feeds your weakness, you must amputate with precision, not out of hate, but out of allegiance to your higher self, and this includes internal voices. The mental conversation must shift. No more, "What if I fail?" Instead, "What must I do now to ensure success?" No more, "I hope it works." Replace it with, "I will persist until it works." Hill was clear. Persistence is the iron quality of success. It is not talent, not genius, not luck, but raw, relentless pursuit. As you reconstruct, document everything. Keep a journal. Track your behaviors. Study your own mental patterns like a strategist mapping the battlefield. This is not vanity, it is vigilance. The new self you are building is a weapon, and weapons must be maintained, sharpened, and guarded. Do not expect applause. Do not seek approval. Your rebirth will offend the mediocre. Hill knew this. The man who dares to discipline himself becomes a mirror, and others will hate what they see reflected. Let them. You are not building for them. This phase is sacred. It is the burial of the old and the engineering of the new. You are becoming dangerous, not in violence, but in discipline. You are becoming unshakable, not in arrogance, but in certainty. You are becoming immune, not in isolation, but in focus. The psychology of internal rebirth, according to Napoleon Hill, is simple but not easy. Decide who you will be. Burn the bridge to who you were. Act with such precision that the old self has nowhere left to hide. Every action you take, every thought you entertain, every emotion you tolerate is forming a habit. And every habit, according to Napoleon Hill, is subject to a universal law few men even recognize, the law of cosmic habit force. It is the silent force that governs your results. Ignore it, and you are a slave. Master it, and you control destiny itself. The law of cosmic habit force operates just like gravity, unseen but absolute. It does not judge your habits, it merely makes them permanent. If you feed it fear, hesitation, laziness, or doubt, it encodes these into your subconscious and locks them in as your default state. But if you feed it discipline, decisiveness, purpose, and persistence, it does the same. The choice is yours. But the consequences are automatic. This is why killing your weak self is not just about mindset, it is about mechanics. Hill wrote that habit grows out of environment. out of doing the same thing in the same way, repeatedly. So to become someone new, you cannot simply think new thoughts. You must act in new ways consistently until those actions become identity. Rebuilding yourself means leveraging cosmic habit force like a sculptor uses a chisel. You shape the new self through repetition, through consistency, through conscious control of your rituals. Hill insisted, you are where you are and what you are because of your established habits of thought and deed. Nothing changes until the inputs change. This is not motivational theory, it is natural law. And here's the catch, the old self, the weak self, is not only rooted in your thoughts, it's also rooted in your physical environment. Your room, your habits, your calendar, your associations, they all form a matrix of reinforcement. If you say you want to become powerful, but your space is chaotic, your schedule aimless, your friends passive, your subconscious sees the contradiction and defaults to what is known. To align with the law of cosmic habit force, you must eliminate contradictions. That means systematizing your new identity. What time do you wake up? What do you consume in the first hour? What does your workspace look like? What are your 3 non-negotiables each day? How do you respond to fear? How do you recover from setbacks? These are not minor questions. They are the foundation of the new self you're constructing, because the law does not respond to what you say. It responds to what you do repeatedly. If you act like a disciplined man, even before you feel like one, habit force begins to reinforce that pattern. Eventually, it becomes automatic. And this is where the weak self dies for good, not in a moment of hype, but in the discipline of systems. Hill spoke of organized effort as the bridge between desire and reality. Most men have dreams, but no structure. They speak of what they want, but their habits betray them. That's why their old self survives. You must build systems that trap you in forward motion, systems that make it harder to fail than to succeed. For example, if you want to wake up at 5 a.m., don't rely on willpower. Set 3 alarms. Put your phone across the room. Schedule a call at 5:15 with someone who will hold you accountable. Create friction against failure. Hill believed in discipline, but he believed more in organized effort. And effort is nothing without structure. The law of cosmic habit force also explains why temporary motivation fails. You might be fired up after watching this video. You might even take action today. But if that action is not structured, repeated, and emotionally charged, the old habits will return. Why? Because they're automatic. And automatic habits cannot be broken by emotion alone. They must be replaced by new patterns, installed through conscious effort. This is why affirmations matter, not as superstition, but as reprogramming. Hill taught that spoken word, backed by faith, repeated with emotion, imprints the subconscious mind. If you say every day, I am disciplined, I act decisively, I control my emotions, I persist until I win, and you back it with action, cosmic habit force engraves those traits into your identity. But if your words say one thing and your actions say another, the law obeys the action. Always. Let's go deeper. Hill's philosophy is not merely self-help, it is metaphysical engineering. You are engineering a new version of yourself through belief, decision, and disciplined repetition. This is why the weak self cannot coexist with structure. The weak self thrives on randomness, on emotion, on reaction. The new self demands order, purpose, and proactive command. Cosmic habit force rewards alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, actions, and environment are all pointing in the same direction, momentum becomes effortless. You no longer have to push so hard because the universe itself, through this law, begins to accelerate your trajectory. You meet the right people. The right ideas show up. You feel pulled by your vision instead of pushed by pressure. This is not mystical, it's practical. You've installed a new internal operating system, one that serves your highest identity. not your lowest impulse. So how do you know if you're aligned with cosmic habit force? Simple. Look at your routines, look at your results, look at your emotions. If you are moving with confidence, clarity, and control, you're on the path. If you're still reacting, doubting, drifting, you are still under the grip of the old patterns. Hill made it clear, nature will not tolerate idleness or vacuums of any sort. All space must be and is filled with something. If you don't fill your mind with purpose, it will be filled with fear. If you don't fill your days with structure, they will be filled with distraction. If you don't fill your life with discipline, it will be filled with regret. This is why killing the weak self is not a single act. It is a continual process of reaffirming the new self through daily ritual, through intentional design, through alignment with a law that never sleeps. You are not who you were, but you are not yet who you must become. That bridge is built through the habits you install, the structure you uphold, and the standard you refuse to compromise. The law of cosmic habit force is working right now. The only question is it working for you or against you? The moment you decide who you are and what you are here to do, your old self begins to tremble. Because definiteness is the one thing the weak self cannot survive. Napoleon Hill was unequivocal. There is one quality which one must possess to win, and that is definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, and a burning desire to possess it. Most people think they know what they want, but ask them to define it with precision, to write it down, to give it a date, a value, a structure, and they crumble. The truth is, vagueness protects the weak self. As long as you're unsure, you never have to act. As long as you're dreaming, you never have to execute. That's why the weak self loves daydreaming, journaling without decision, talking without movement. Definiteness of purpose is the fire that incinerates these behaviors. It is the birth of strategy, the source of all sustained action. Hill believed that every achievement, without exception, began with a definiteness so sharp it cut through distraction, doubt, and delay. You cannot build a new identity without knowing what that identity serves. Rebuilding yourself is not about becoming better. That's vague. It's about becoming specific. Do you want to become a man who earns a certain amount, who lives a certain discipline, who exerts a certain influence, who commands a certain respect? Then define it in exact terms, and then build everything around it. Hill instructed his readers to write a clear statement of their major purpose in life, to memorize it, to repeat it morning and night, and to back it with action. This is not poetry, this is programming. The subconscious mind does not respond to theory. It responds to clarity, consistency, and emotion. When you install definiteness, you give your mind a command it cannot ignore. The weak self is always lost in options. The new self creates one path and walks it. Let's be blunt. If you are still entertaining 5 different business ideas, 3 conflicting goals, 10 different distractions, you are not in motion, you are in mental fog. And fog is the breeding ground of fear. Hill wrote that lack of decision is the major cause of failure. You don't fail because you're incapable. You fail because you're undecided. So what is your purpose? Not your wish, not your fantasy. Your purpose. What is the outcome so vital that you would change your diet, your schedule, your environment, and your relationships to obtain it? Ask yourself this now. What am I pretending not to know about my real purpose? Because deep down, you already know. But you've buried it under expectations, noise, doubt, and fear of judgment. Hill taught that once a man defines his definite purpose, the universe begins to rearrange itself in his favor. But first, he must stop lying to himself, and this is where most people stop. Because definiteness demands sacrifice. You must give up who you were. You must say no to the good to pursue the great. You must defend the comfort of others to honor the fire within yourself. And this makes you dangerous, because the man with Purpose cannot be controlled by suggestion, distraction, or fear. He becomes immune to gossip, immune to rejection, immune to inner confusion. He is no longer moved by emotion, he is moved by mission. He'll emphasize the power of combining definiteness with persistence. It's not enough to define your purpose, you must pursue it relentlessly, and that means structure. What is your plan? Who is your mastermind? What time each day is dedicated to your pursuit? What behaviors are you measuring? What sacrifices have you made this week in service of your aim? If you cannot answer those questions with clarity, your purpose is not definite, it is decorative. And decorative purposes do not change lives. They decorate journals, they fill vision boards, but they do not transform the man. And when your purpose is vague, the weak self thrives. It grows in the shadows of confusion, in the cracks of contradiction. But when your purpose is burning daily, reinforced by action, it is like sunlight. The weak self cannot survive in that light. It melts, it flees, it disappears, and something stronger takes its place. This is not theory. This is how every great man you admire was built, not by chance, not by luck, but by the deliberate pursuit of a definite purpose, reinforced by the laws Hill uncovered in his lifetime of research. Let me be clear, you cannot rebuild your life without this step. All motivation, all energy, all power in your system is directional. And if there is no direction, it dissipates. But with definiteness, it concentrates. And when it concentrates, it becomes unstoppable. You'll start to notice changes. You'll speak less. You'll act more. You'll cut distractions with speed. You'll organize your time like a warrior organizes his weapons. You'll notice how much energy you wasted on things that didn't serve you, and you'll take it back. Definiteness creates personal gravity. People will begin to orbit around your focus. Opportunities will be pulled to you, but not by magic, by magnetism. Because Hill was right. Success is not something you chase. It is something you attract by the person you become. And that person is not formed in fantasy. He is forged in the fire of clear intention, relentless pursuit, and strategic execution. From this point forward, let your life be guided by one question. Does this action serve my definite purpose? If yes, do it with urgency. If no, eliminate it without guilt. Because when you live like this, the weak self dies of starvation. You cannot dominate your life until you dominate your emotions. Napoleon Hill emphasized again and again that the uncontrolled mind is the true enemy of success. Not circumstance, not external events, not bad luck. It is the storm within that wrecks the vessel. The weak self is emotional by nature. It reacts, it takes offense, it seeks validation, it panics at resistance, it flees discomfort. It is a child behind the wheel of your destiny, slamming the brakes at every sign of pressure. And Hill was ruthless in exposing this flaw. Until you have learned to be indifferent to the opinion of others, you will have neither success nor peace. Emotional mastery is not the suppression of feeling, it is the redirection of energy. Hill believed that every emotion, especially fear, anger, desire, and enthusiasm, holds power. But that power is neutral until you direct it. Like electricity, it can light a city or kill a man. It depends on the conductor. The rebuilding of the self begins with the installation of emotional control. And that begins with awareness. You must stop being surprised by your reactions. You must begin studying them. What triggers you? What weakens your focus? What insults penetrate your armor? What setbacks shake your confidence? Most people avoid these questions. The new self pursues them. Because each emotional pattern you identify is a key to internal mastery. Hill spoke of the need to take inventory of one's thoughts, emotions, and responses. Just like a business takes inventory of assets and liabilities, you must do the same with your state of mind. When you feel fear, don't fight it, study it. What belief triggered it? What outcome are you attached to? When you feel rage, don't justify it. Observe it. What identity is being threatened? What image of self are you defending? These observations are not philosophical, they are tactical. They allow you to intervene before you act, to redirect energy before it sabotages your intent. Hill said it clearly: control your own mind, and you may never be controlled by the mind of another. This is psychological sovereignty. It means no one can manipulate you, no setback can define you, no insult can derail you because you rule within. Let's talk about transmutation, one of Hill's most advanced principles. He believed that emotional energy, especially sexual energy, could be transmuted into creative power, physical energy, financial drive, and personal magnetism. The key, again, is not suppression, it is direction. The weak self is impulsive. It leaks energy, it chases pleasure, it indulges in moments and sacrifices the mission. But the disciplined self channels that fire into action. Every desire becomes fuel, every frustration becomes focus, every obstacle becomes a challenge to dominate, not avoid. And here's what most don't realize: emotional mastery is visible. People can see it, they can feel it. When you walk into a room and you are unmoved by chaos, when your voice remains calm under pressure, when your eyes do not flinch under attack, power is felt, not spoken. This is the kind of presence Hill referred to when he described the attractive personality. A personality shaped not by charm, but by inner strength. The man who masters his emotions exudes authority. Not because he demands it, but because he radiates it. And that authority begins in solitude. In the quiet moments when no one is watching, how do you handle your failures? Do you spiral into self-pity or rise with resolve? When plans collapse, do you adjust and advance or collapse with them? You must train your emotions like you train a soldier. Every time you act with composure when chaos invites panic, you are training. Every time you respond with discipline when pleasure calls, you are conditioning. And every time you remain calm when provoked, you are sharpening the edge of your mind. This is not stoicism, it is war strategy. Hill knew that most men lose not because of defeat, but because of reaction. They lose their temper, their focus, their discipline, and the weak self celebrates, even as the mission dies. You must learn to delay reaction, to analyze before responding, to act with precision. This is emotional transmutation in action, and the results compound. As you master your state, you begin to dominate your environment. People trust you more. Opportunities increase. Pressure becomes your fuel, not your limit. But emotional mastery also means responsibility. You are no longer allowed to blame, no longer allowed to point at the world and say, "It made me feel this way." Hill was brutal here. The man who blames has already surrendered. The man who owns his state owns his future. So here is the law: never react, respond. Never explode, direct. Never retreat emotionally, restructure internally. Your emotions are your servants. Treat them like royalty, and they will command you. Train them like warriors, and they will protect you. The man who masters emotion is the man who cannot be manipulated, cannot be swayed, cannot be stopped. He moves with intent, speaks with weight, acts with calm fire. He does not flinch, he does not fold. He builds, day by day, the mind of a king. If definiteness of purpose is the compass and emotional mastery the engine, then discipline is the unrelenting force that keeps the vehicle moving, day after day, through rain, heat, darkness, and doubt. Napoleon Hill did not romanticize success. He revealed it for what it truly is: a process of internal conquest. And no element is more central to that conquest than the daily violent enforcement of discipline. To rebuild the self, you must embrace the sacred nature of discipline. Not as punishment, not as restriction, but as liberation. the only structure that can contain the fire of a new identity without letting it burn everything in sight. Hill taught that success is the result of habit, and habit the result of repeated discipline. You cannot wait to feel ready. You cannot wait to feel inspired. You act regardless of mood. You execute regardless of emotion. This is how the weak self is shattered, not by one act of heroism, but by the silent consistency of a man who shows up even when no one is watching. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you weaken the grip of the old identity. Every time you rise with the alarm instead of hitting snooze, you declare war against the inner saboteur. Every time you follow your plan instead of your feelings, you are building new grooves into the brain. Grooves that soon become automatic. This is cosmic habit force at work, weaponized. And yet most people still seek motivation. They binge content, they quote Hill, but they fail to apply his most fundamental law: action. Hill was merciless about this. Action is the real measure of intelligence, he said, and not sporadic action, not bursts, but organized, sustained, directed movement. The weak self seeks variety, it needs novelty, it gets bored with repetition. But greatness is repetition. Discipline is doing the essential things over and over until they yield inevitable power. You must develop rituals that transcend mood. You wake at the same hour. You read from the same sacred texts. You plan your day the night before. You execute your most critical task first. You do not debate these actions. You consecrate them. They are non-negotiable, immovable, unbreakable. Hill described this in terms of definiteness backed by applied faith. Faith not in the mystical, but in the law of cause and effect. You act with discipline because you believe the compound results are inevitable. You know that no act done with intention is wasted. You know that the man who works with structure ultimately bends the universe to his will, not through hope, but through force. Let's talk about resistance. The weak self will scream when you begin to enforce new standards. It will whisper lies. You've done enough. You deserve rest. This doesn't matter. Discipline is the act of killing that. Voice with movement, not argument, movement. You do not negotiate with weakness. You overpower it with behavior, and it is here that true confidence is born. Not from affirmations, not from external praise, but from the knowing that you can command yourself. That when you say, "We rise," your body obeys. That when you say, "We work," your mind complies. This is the essence of self-respect. Hill said, "The person who is not master of himself can never be master of others." And you are always leading someone, if not others, then your future self. If he cannot count on you to act with structure, he will suffer the consequences. Every day you delay discipline, you sentence your future to disorder. And disorder is the death of progress. Hill believed in definite plans. He insisted that success was 98% plan and 2% execution. Why? Because plans are the skeleton on which discipline hangs. Without them, energy scatters, focus fades, the weak self regains control. So what is your plan? What do your mornings look like? How are your days structured? When do you review your goals? Who holds you accountable? If you cannot answer with precision, then discipline is still theoretical for you, and theory cannot rebuild a broken man. Discipline is also protection. It keeps you grounded when emotion strikes. It keeps you focused when opportunity distracts. It keeps you humble when results appear. The undisciplined man is prey to every fluctuation, but the disciplined man moves through chaos with stillness. He acts from the code, not the mood, and this code must be personal. Written by you, for you, enforced by you. It is your covenant, and when you break it, something within dies. Hill taught that every broken promise to self erodes self-trust. But every kept promise, no matter how small, builds internal steel. You must begin with small victories. Wake on time, follow your plan. Read your aim aloud, execute your task, reflect, adjust, repeat. Each day another brick, each act another kill shot to the weak self. And then, without fanfare, something changes. People ask if you've changed. You speak less, you act more. You glow, not with arrogance, but with certainty, because discipline has taken root. And with it, the old self has no soil left in which to grow. Discipline is not a phase, it is not a challenge, it is a way, a weapon, a vow. A tool of transformation so powerful that, when fully embodied, it makes you unrecognizable. You are not your habits, but you are their architect. There is a moment when structure is not enough, when discipline alone won't carry you, when your mind, reorganized and focused, still trembles before the unknown. It is at this threshold that Napoleon Hill places the two most potent forces of human transformation, faith and decision, to rebuild your life, to annihilate the weak self and construct a new force of nature. You must not only act with discipline, but believe in the inevitability of your success and decide that failure is no longer an option. Let's begin with faith, but not the faith taught by religion. Hill's definition is far more mechanical. Faith to him is a state of mind that may be induced or created by affirmation, repetition, and the principle of autosuggestion. It is belief emotionalized and reinforced until it becomes dominant. The weak self operates in doubt. It seeks proof before commitment. It hesitates before every move, waiting for permission from the outside world. But faith is internal fire. It says, "Because I decided, it will be so." It is the refusal to surrender to circumstance, the defiance that says, "I am the master," even when evidence suggests otherwise. Hill taught, faith is the only known antidote for failure. Why? Because faith converts intention into action, and repeated action, powered by belief, overrides fear, neutralizes doubt, and activates the subconscious mind to seek and deliver the means by which your purpose is fulfilled. Faith is not wishful thinking. It is an energy force. It is the ability to act as if the goal is already secured. And every time you act with certainty, even in darkness, you send a message to your subconscious. We are done with the old way. This is who we are now. Now combine that with decision, Hill's ultimate separator of men. In Think and Grow Rich, he was brutal. The world has the habit of making room for the man whose words and actions show that he knows where he is going. Weakness is found in indecision. Power is found in immediate, definite action. Most men fail, not because they lacked opportunity, but because they hesitated at the crossroads. The weak self loves to delay. It rationalizes, it postpones, it defers to opinion, but the decisive man becomes a force, not because his first move is perfect, but because he moves. He learns in motion, he adjusts through action. And Hill's research was clear. Every successful man he interviewed reached decisions promptly and changed them slowly, if ever. Faith without decision is fantasy. Decision without faith is unsustainable. But together, they seal your evolution. Your rebuilding demands decisions that fracture your past. You must decide to leave the old self behind, not gradually, but now. Not when it's convenient, but when it's uncomfortable. And you must fuel that decision with faith, backed by daily discipline, rooted in purpose. Hill described this process as the transformation of desire into belief, belief into action, and action into results. But the engine of this transformation is always decide and believe. Here's where it becomes sacred. Faith and decision are not one-time events. They are states you must activate daily. You wake up and decide. Again. You reaffirm belief. Again. You stare down uncertainty and you act, not because you're sure, but because you are committed. This is how new identities are formed. Not in theory, but in practice. Hill called it the habit of decisiveness. It is the mental posture that says, I choose, I commit, I advance, and I do not retreat. You must install this posture in your nervous system. Speak it aloud. Affirm your power. Move with speed. Stop asking for confirmation. Act. Let the results speak. Do not be confused. Faith is not the absence of fear. It is the conquest of it. Decision is not the elimination of doubt. It is the refusal to obey it. Together, they create a psychological environment where the weak self cannot survive. Because the weak self depends on delay. It needs more time, more feedback, more validation. But the man of faith and decision kills all delay with movement. From this point on, train your mind like this. Decide quickly. Act boldly. Believe relentlessly. This is the formula that Hill left us. It is the formula that built empires, wrote legends, and transformed failures into forces of nature. You have a purpose, you have a plan, you have a structure. Now you decide, and you believe. And when you do, the universe reorganizes itself to make room for the new version of you. The final test of the new self is not action, it is defense. Because the most dangerous threat to your evolution is not failure, it is infiltration. Once you've rebuilt yourself with discipline, purpose, and faith, there remains one battlefield unguarded, your mind. And it is here, in silence, that most fall again. Napoleon Hill warned us, the mind resembles a fertile garden spot in which weeds will grow in abundance if the seeds of more desirable crops are not sown. Your rebuilt identity is powerful, but it is not invincible. It must be protected, because the enemy is always watching, through media, opinion, fear, suggestion, gossip, failure, fatigue. It does not attack directly, it whispers, it plants doubt, it wraps poison in the language of reason. This is the silent war, and in this war, your mind is both the battlefield and the prize. The weak self, though slain, will always try to rise again through the cracks of exposure. Hill wrote about drifting, the slow, unconscious slide into mediocrity that happens when we drop our guard, even for a moment. A missed journal, a skipped discipline, a conversation with someone who doubts your vision, a relapse into distraction. These are not small errors. They are open gates to destruction. Guarding your mind means becoming a sentinel over every word, every image, every interaction. What do you allow into your system? What are you watching, reading, listening to? Who do you speak with? Who do you follow? If you are serious about killing the weak self, these questions are not optional, they are urgent. Hill explained that the subconscious mind does not filter, it absorbs, and every repeated input becomes belief. If you flood it with negativity, fear, sarcasm, complaint, it will encode those as truth. If you surround yourself with people who rationalize weakness, the system will eventually obey. To maintain your evolution, you must curate your environment with military precision. This is not isolation. This is strategy. You must feed your subconscious the language of victory, of resilience, of power, until that language becomes automatic. Hill's most advanced students created success libraries, collections of books, recordings, and visual affirmations that reprogrammed the mind daily. But it goes further. You must also monitor your internal dialogue. The words you speak to yourself in quiet moments. Are they empowering, precise, purposeful, or are they still contaminated by the voice of the old self? Here is your daily protocol. Begin the day with repetition of your definite purpose. Read a passage of Hill's philosophy aloud. Reflect in silence. Listen for resistance. Eliminate the weak thought. Replace it with a dominant one. Speak victory on. Move into action. Repeat. This is not overkill. This is survival. You are not average. You are not drifting. You are rebuilding. And rebuilding requires obsession, not in fear, but in reverence for the mission. You must become allergic to mediocrity. When you hear weak language, It should offend your system. When you see passive behavior, it should trigger correction, not judgment but contrast. Hill believed that autosuggestion was the bridge between conscious will and unconscious power. But suggestion works both ways. If you do not actively control what enters your mind, others will do it for you. Advertisers, peers, culture, news cycles, all of it becomes input, and all of it shapes who you are becoming. This is why guarding your mind is not just a tip, it is a commandment. Because the greatest danger is not being attacked, it is being seduced into softness, into casualness, into good enough. And once you return to that level, the old self rises again, stronger, smarter, more subtle. This is why many fall after initial growth. They believe the battle is over. It is not. Your new self is a fortress, and every fortress must be defended, not with walls, but with awareness, with selection, with control. You are allowed to choose what you think. You are allowed to reject ideas. You are allowed to walk away from conversations. You are allowed to say, "That's not my reality." This is not arrogance. It is responsibility. Guard your mind, because every word is a seed. Every thought is a builder. Every belief is a blueprint. The weak self dies when it is starved of permission. The new self thrives when it is fed with power. This is the silent war, and you win it every day or you don't. This is the final hour, the moment of no return. You've been handed the map, the principles, the fire. Now the only question left is this: will you live as the dominant force in your life or remain a prisoner of who you were? Napoleon Hill's legacy was never about surface-level change. It was a revolution of identity, a system of internal conquest designed to take ordinary men and forge them into warriors, disciplined, directed, and dangerous. You've killed the weak self. You've rebuilt your foundations. You've aligned with the law of cosmic habitforce. You've installed emotional mastery, definiteness of purpose, and strategic discipline. But all of this is nothing, unless it is enforced daily. Repetition is your religion now. Execution is your worship. Hill said it clearly. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it. The man who masters self no longer talks. He walks. His habits are louder than his words. His actions speak before his name is even mentioned. That's who you must become. Not because it sounds good, but because the alternative is death. Death of dreams, death of dignity, death of legacy. Every morning, you must rise with intention. You are not waking up to survive. You are waking up to dominate. Your first thoughts must be of purpose. Your first moves must be aligned with the version of you that already exists in your vision. Stop asking how. Start declaring who. You want freedom, build it. You want power, train for it. You want respect, earn it, alone, in silence, in discipline, in blood and repetition. Hill didn't say this journey would be easy. He said it would be earned. You do not need motivation. You need remembrance. Remember who you were when you started. Remember what you promised yourself. Remember the pain of drifting, the embarrassment of hesitation, the shame of quitting. And use that fire. Use it every day. As fuel, you are now the kind of person who acts regardless of emotion, who stays calm in chaos, who moves with precision. You are not reactive, you are intentional. You are not confused, you are clear. You are not who you were, you are who you've decided to become. And if no one sees it yet, good. Let your silence build pressure. Let your discipline speak when it's time. You don't owe the world an explanation. You owe your future a result. Now, go, act, execute, repeat, until there is no gap left between your vision and your reality. Here is your final mission. Like this video if it struck something deep inside you. Subscribe for the fire that will never let you drift again. And share this video with 3 friends, 3 warriors you want on this path with you. Because the world doesn't need more opinions. It needs more masters of self. Are you one of them? Or are you still pretending?